Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared Flo.
Thank you for joining us again this week. So this week's title sounds pretty boring, but what we're covering is a super important part of the processes and procedures in your company.
I mean, it's kind of about money. So
yes, it is. And so there's a right way and a normal way that people go collect, receive payment. We're going to break that down a little bit. There's not really a wrong way, but there is efficient ways to get money into your account quicker, efficient ways to where the company as you grow functions properly. So we're going to kind of talk two different ways. One, a one-man show, how you should do it, running jobs yourself, all the way up through. I've got project managers, I've got different employees. How should I systemize the intake and input of money? Because it's not just taking a check and depositing in the bank. It's also the back end side of making sure jobs are accurate. My QuickBooks is that everything is accurate. And so once everything's accurate, then I can track on the outside as a company owner where my money's coming, where my money's going, how much do I actually have to spend, where should I pay here, where should I pay there. And so it's really the beginning of getting the financial organization is how exactly I process receiving these funds. And like I said, it sounds boring. One-man show, I send an invoice, I get the money, I put it in the bank. But it's a lot more than that if you're trying to duplicate yourself and grow the company.
Well, and I mean, really where this conversation is going to kind of, diverge from one to the other is kind of where a lot of our conversations are. If your desire is to grow your company in any form or fashion, it doesn't matter if you want to grow to, I want to do 500, I want to do $1 million a year, and that's where I'm comfortable, or I want to be in all 50 states. If your desire is to grow, then these things are going to be important for you to be able to do that. Yep. If you're one-man show and you like where it is and whatever, keep running your process. Yep. That's fine. You know?
We always say if you want to be a big company, you first have to act like a big company, right? If I'm going to grow and hire 2, 3, 5 project managers, maybe start a second location in a different city, to be able to do that, you have to get your processes in place now, and that's why we preach so hard on this. As a one-man show, it's important to systemize how you're doing it, so then I bring the next guy in, teach them that system, show them how it's done, and it runs smoothly.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it. Let's start out talking about our systematic way that we do payments. And now let's talk about with a larger general contracting company, or really any company that has employees in it. The way that we regulate that is I want my head of construction, my general manager, whatever the person is managing over the project managers, that person needs to know on a weekly basis, every Friday is when we do it, what is being invoiced, what is going to be collected in the next 7 days. What does next week look like? And we're going job by job. And we've talked about this in other podcasts. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but this is the spot that starts raising flags, right? My project manager's trying to send some invoices out, and he's got 30 grand of invoices on 2 jobs. Well, I'm looking over saying, well, we're not going to pay for that because you haven't even ordered the granite yet. Why is that on here? This isn't on here. And so the weekly invoicing is a whole nother thing, but it also means I need weekly payments.
Right.
And the way that we do invoicing so frequently, not having a systematic way to receive payments, it just becomes chaotic if you try to shift over to our model of weekly invoicing.
Yeah, well, and it's fine if you've got $500,000 worth of cash just sitting there that you can continue to float the company.
Yep.
But not many people that we know have that kind of cash just sitting around.
Yep.
Right? It is a week to week, money in, money out. And so you have to have a system to be able to kind of organize and be able to keep your eyes on it and raise the flags when they need to be raised.
Well, and if someone's not paying their bill, it's usually because they're trying to get out of paying it. They don't think they owe it to you, or they're just dragging their feet and they're going to be a problem. But I don't care if I got $20 million sitting in the bank as a company. If I send an invoice, I need a systematic way for that to get paid quickly. Right. So the cash flow and week over week is winning each single week. Right. I want to collect this week the same amount or more than what I'm paying out to my crews. If I win every single week, I can take that money and start putting it into my different profit, different overhead, my different accounts that we're using. But I'm not going to say, well, I got money in the bank, I'll just collect that check in a couple weeks. That's not the way you function, because then in a couple of weeks, I forgot about it. And 5 weeks from there, that customer is like, oh, I don't owe you that. I think I already paid you that. And now it's this tug of war to get the money owed to you when a month ago when I sent the invoice, they would have paid you if I would have collected properly.
Right. Well, and one of the other things is that when you get employees, they're never going to have the same mentality that you do about the business, the urgency of invoicing, the urgency of collecting on that money. When you were a one-man show, when you invoiced, you were in contact with that client.
Yep.
They knew, what was owed, any questions, problems, when can I come pick up this check? Because you knew in the background how much money I need, how much money is going out. I got to get this money, right? So there wasn't any question on your side of, I need to create urgency behind it. It was just naturally there.
Yeah.
Employees are not going to have that. They're just not. And so you have to create a system and a process that helps them have that urgency, because a standard project manager is going to execute his job and he's going to invoice and feel like it's done.
Yep.
I'm done.
I did what I was supposed to do. Execution was completed. I think a part of that too is when you're a one-man show, I have everything in my head. I might have 4 jobs running, some starting, some finishing, some in the middle. But I know Susan Johnson, that client pays by this way. She's got a lender. They're going to wire us the money, X, Y, and Z. I got to do this. Bob over here has cash. Whenever I ask for money, he cuts it. Jim over here, whenever I ask him for money, it takes about 3 weeks for the tug of war to happen. And all that's in my head, right? And I know, I got Home Depot to pay next week, but I also got these crews finishing, so I need this. So I'm going to need about 40 for next week. Okay, what client can – and I can sit there and do that in my head just fine. And so a lot of like what you just said, the employee mentality versus the owner mentality, when I'm an owner – those dollars are what I pay my mortgage with. So collecting those is important, getting these things paid so I know the crews come back, getting Home Depot paid so that line doesn't close down. All of that is top priority to me in my job position. I'm working and doing this to collect that money.
Right.
Where the employee, I have a project manager, not out of malice, but the employee is like, my job is to get this project managed. Yep. Get it done and finished. And one of my tasks is to go get that check from the job site. But that's just one of the tasks that's probably a lower priority than getting something ordered or reacting to a fire. Though I know I'll go get that. I'm sorry, I'll go get that. So really when you're looking at systemizing, you need to start looking at how you're currently doing it, even as a one-man show. What are the methods of payment that I'm taking? So walking through that, the main methods that we take is obviously we'll take a check or cash. No one's rarely pay cash on the size of jobs we do.
It happens.
It happens, but it's a rarity.
We did have one guy try to pay us with Home Depot vouchers.
Yes, Home Depot gift cards. And we're like, we're good with Home Depot. But check is obviously easy because especially when you're running jobs, you're there, you can pick it up, you can grab it, deposit it right away. It takes a day or two, but then I get the cash. So check is one. And then another way are wires, right? When someone wants to send us a wire, a lot of times like an out-of-state investor who's doing a project in our city.
And typically a larger sum of money versus like a $10,000.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing a wire, it's a $25 fee now on
minimally,
a wire.
yeah.
Minimally.
Yeah.
So, if someone's sending us $90,000, they're going to wire it. Usually they're not going to drop a check in the mail. But a lot of times, our day in and day out with our weekly invoicing, we're not invoicing $90,000 a week for a one-off client. We might through 17 jobs, but not from one client. So when those really don't work, when I invoice someone $6,000 for them to pay a $25 wiring fee and me wait 5, 6, 7 days for them to get there, for it to happen, for the wire to complete, all that stuff. Yeah. So we don't love wires because it's just a headache and it's different. And they just deposit and it shows up in your account, and sometimes we don't know where that money came from and what job is that tied to. So
a lot of banks charge to send the wire, and also charge to receive the wire, right? So there's cost to the client and
money
it costs you,
everywhere.
And I mean, I think checks used to be like the standard norm. Yeah. Right. It was like most of the time a check is what was happening. And that's still the case today. But I think it is creeping more towards where we're going next, which is credit cards, online payments, ACH, all of that stuff. I think the meter's kind of tipping kind of half and half, depending on what the contractors themselves have access to technology-wise.
Yeah, and if you're a one-off tradie, someone is a handyman or I fix HVAC, Zelle and Venmo, those things work, but they have a daily maximum. They have a transaction maximum. I mean, most of them don't go above 5,000 in a week's time.
Well, and and some of them, there's a variance between a personal Venmo and a business Venmo, and then there's different regulations on it.
Well, and what we ran into, we'd have clients say, "Hey, do you take Venmo?" Yeah, sure. And so we'd say yes to the client. And then next week, someone else asks, and we say yes to them. Well, someone pays us, and it's great. The second one gets rejected because it's going over the Venmo limit. There's just all sorts of issues to where when someone wants to pay us, we want them to be able to pay us and not have this back and forth that we got to hunt that money down. So we don't love it. Again, it's a great, real quick, boom. That's they owe us $800 more on this job. Just Venmo us, and we'll get it in the account. Yeah. But it's still not a good, solid plan to systemize around those methods because they have so many limitations. And sometimes fees associated.
Well, it's also, with a Venmo, it can be easy for when it comes to accounting for it to kind of disappear. You forget about it, or you don't know what to do with it. It's like this random amount of cash, but there's not any kind of notes associated with it. So there's a possibility of like, where'd this $800 come from?
Yeah, Well, and the person in the software under the client is the husband. And then the wife Venmos me, who might have a different last name. And I'm like, I don't know where this money, who this person is, And so there's all sorts of confusion.
And again, on a smaller scale, it's fine. It works just fine.
But systemizing, I would move past that. And we don't really offer it unless someone asks at this point. And so really pick up a check on site or having them drop it in the mail, which I don't love the option of them dropping in the mail. But picking up on site, and then really the other two methods are ACH and credit card. And so we've always moved away from credit card because it is such an expense for us. In general contracting, our goal to take home at the end of the day is 8 to 10%. Most contractors, the industry average according to NARI, is an average contractor does 1.1 million a year, and their net profit at the very end is
after all payroll, all the overhead, your
is
material.
4%. After paying yourself everything is 4%. And so when you're taking credit cards and you're paying 3.5% on to the credit card company, you're making $0. You're working for free. And so those are the drops in the bucket that when you're a small one-man show, it's like, yeah, give me the money now. Here, I'll take your credit card. I've got a merchant account.
You get to the end of the year and you're like, why didn't I make any money?
Yeah, that's one of the spots. If you're doing $1 million a year, $2 million a year, and you're losing 3% on that, that's huge. You
can't afford to lose that.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things. Just like Venmo, if you're doing it here or there, and you're just you've got that 3% built in, or what we used to do is, hey. Yeah, I'll take credit card, but it's 3%. And so Jared says, hey, yeah, let me pay by credit card. Then I got to go into the job. I got to add a 3% line item. Then I got to resend them the invoice. And now I'm invoicing for something that's increasing my revenue, even though it's going straight back out. Right. Then the payment that comes in from the credit card company doesn't match my invoice because
it's a different dollar amount.
They keep the 3% and deposit the amount minus that 3%. So it just
becomes an accounting nightmare.
An accounting nightmare where nothing matched up in QuickBooks. Nothing worked well. So this is the new way that we do it. This is the systematic way that our company does and that we suggest your company does it. Picking up checks, great. If you have a systematic way, what we do with that is our project manager has to call the office, let them know I picked up a check from X, Y, and Z. I'll have it on the desk of the office manager by tomorrow. I'm coming by the office. And so there's two people that know it's there. The office manager is waiting to receive it. And if a homeowner calls the office manager, like, yeah, we do have your check on the way. It should be here tomorrow, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Accountability
on that. The other two ways is we have in our software, we're integrated with a company called Koppr Payments. And Koppr is built around the construction industry. So it's an integration into the ProStruct 360 software. And so what the software does is when I go, and let's say I have a $1,000 invoice I'm sending to Jared. I go into the software. I say, okay, Jared owes me $1,000. Send invoice. It pops up an email. At the bottom of the email, if I've signed up for Koppr inside the software, there's two check boxes, and they're both pre-checked, and it says, allow this client to pay by ACH, allow this client to pay by credit card. Yep. They're both checked. Great. I send him the invoice. When he gets the invoice, there's a little payment button on it. And he goes and hits pay now. It goes to the Koppr portal with my company's logo information on it, and Jared can make a payment against his invoice.
Yeah, and I can choose ACH or credit card because those things were checked.
He can choose either one of these. Now, here's the beauty and why we love Koppr is that those transactions pass the 3% charge onto the customer that's making the payment. So if I send Jared an invoice for $1,000 and he goes in and says, I want to pay by credit card, it's going to say, oh, great, you owe $1,030 because it's a 3%, right? And so Jared chooses to pay that. Great, I'll pay $1,030. I'll take the points on my card. When that happens, Koppr keeps that $30 to pay the credit card company.
Yep.
They deposit the $1,000 into my account. When that happens, it also automatically goes into my software, marks that invoice as paid, says on the job this is now received a payment, and pushes through to my QuickBooks.
And closes out the open invoice.
Closes it out, puts it into QuickBooks as a payment on that. It seamlessly does it without me doing anything. So literally, I hit send invoice. Jared pays by credit card, 24, 48 hours. I've got the money in my account. I don't have to touch the accounting side at all. And it's all organized for my accountant, for my office manager, everything.
Well, and there's I think the thing that I love about it is that it's fully integrated into the software.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guys out there that have, maybe they don't have a software that they're using, but they want to offer payments for their, clients. So they've got some kind of payment system that they're paying for, right? And so they've got to log into that one, create the dollar amount invoice and do the thing, and then they receive the payment, and then they've got to go into QuickBooks and they got to manually add it in there. And if they have a software, then they're adding that information. There's 3 different softwares they're bouncing back and forth to try and get this information accurate across all 3 of them. This is integrated in one spot. I don't have to go anywhere. Right? I just hit the buttons in here and it just happens in the background seamlessly and everything's up to date.
And it deposits the exact amount that's on my invoice. And so that way the accounting is smooth. I knew that Jared was paying me $1,000. I see $1,000 deposit. That matches up with my invoice that still says $1,000. And it's super smooth. The only fee that I pay is $10 per transaction. So instead of $30 fee I'm paying, it's $10. So it's super simple in terms of that. Now, on the ACH side, it's the same thing, except that it's like a 0.02 or something. It's whatever the banks charge for ACH, it's paying that fee. Right. And again, the customer pays it. So Jared would have paid $2 on that $1,000 or whatever it was as the customer to pay by ACH. Now, the same thing as any sort of merchant account, if you ever had one, it takes 5-ish days for it to get into your bank. But it's funny, we were doing research on it when we were trying to decide, going with Koppr, that sort of thing. The average time from when I send an invoice and I'm collecting checks by hand is 21 days. There was this big study done talking, really kind of monitoring thousands of companies that were doing this. And what ends up happening is I send an invoice on Friday. Jared says he's going to mail a check, or I'll have a check for you. Monday, Tuesday, I don't get it. Oh, yeah, I forgot to put it out. Wednesday, you say you've got it. Thursday, I pick it up. Friday, I forget to deposit it. Monday, I'm depositing it. Then it takes 2 more days for my bank to clear it. So it takes almost 3 weeks sometimes from when I send an invoice thinking I'm going to get paid for cash to be in my account. Now, 5 days waiting on an ACH. If I send an invoice on Friday and say, hey, Jared, can you pay this? And you say, yeah, I can.
Mid next week, it's going to be in your account.
It's in there, right? Because I can see that you made the payment. We're good to go, and it's happening. So,
and it's a singular transaction. Right. The other transaction of going to the client cutting a check. Well, I've got to get them an invoice. I got them the invoice. They said they're going to cut a check for me. The client then has to at some point pull out a checkbook, write it in there.
Who has checkbooks?
Who has a checkbook? Right. Put it in the mail. Get a stamp. Right. And then you have to get it. Fill out a deposit slip, take it to the bank, or get out your phone, get on your thing, do a mobile deposit, which there's daily limits to the amount of stuff that you can do there, right? So there's a ton of transactions that I'm spending money in gas of running around and doing stuff, time that I could be focusing in on jobs. So, and our initial reaction to 5 days, that seems like a long time. Yeah. And then that's why we started doing the research into it and realized of course, I would love to be able to click the button and the money's there tomorrow. But the banking system, the way that it functions, it's 4, 5, 6 days, somewhere around in that number is when it's going to go into your account. But if you really look at how long it takes you from invoice to cleared into the bank, you're well beyond that. Yeah. And now I can think of one guy that we've coached for years that he has a systemized process of He invoices, and every one of his clients know that they walk their jobs on Friday and they collect checks on Fridays. And he's been able to work that system out, and they collect the checks every single Friday, and they immediately go deposit them. And that's the system that works for them, and it works really well, right? Yeah. It's still a lot of man hours. It's still a lot of work to go on site, because maybe I didn't really need to go on site, but I went there because I need to collect this check, right? But it works well for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I get a check from a client, I go into ProStruct 360, I hit receive payment, I pull up the client, I say how much it is, what account I'm depositing in, hit save. That goes straight to QuickBooks too. So it still is simple which way you're doing it within the software. Yeah. But the goal is we're utilizing the software to keep all of our finances and our reporting very, very down to the dime, right? Yeah. Down to the penny. I know where everything's going, everything's coming. So then I can make wise decisions as the business owner.
Right.
So systemizing that, having it all handled as efficiently as possible to where whether it's credit card, ACH, or receiving checks, let's put a system in place to do those.
Right.
Figuring that part of it out, if you want help with that, let us know. We have a lot of other things that we want to talk about when it comes to payments. We're not going to talk about it today, but wanted to also let you know that the ProStruct software, ProStruct360.com, the payment stuff, Koppr's integrated on our free level. So on Quotes, on Lite, which is $89, where you're adding work orders, all the way up to the Complete, which is QuickBooks integration, all that stuff. It works on all those levels. So you can come in and use our software for free. I think Koppr is like $14 a month or something like that. Yeah. But that's you're applying for a merchant account. Yeah. You've actually got a merchant account through them.
It's just like a Venmo or any of those things. Like you have to go in and create an account and have an account with them and all the stuff. So it's a merchant account that you now have the ability to have money transfer between your accounts. Yeah.
Super easy way to do it. We suggest using that for payment. If you want to try our software for free, we got the free version that's always free. Then we also our Complete and Lite are free for 2 weeks. Go in and test them out and see how they work. We'd love to hop on a Zoom with you, show you around the software as well if you want a demo of it. Go to ProStruct360.com, sign up for a demo, or hit contact us. We'd love to talk about it. Or if you have any questions about payments, we'd love to chat with you too. 100%. Hit us up on the contact us, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.
All right.